It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club. I hope you are safe wherever you are, and also you keep maintaining social distancing. You wear a mask if you're in the public or where there are a lot of people. We need to remind ourselves that COVID is there and it's real, and we have seen that in the past few days, cases have gone up. The number of people who are being hospitalized is also going up, and we really encourage people to keep safe during this festive season. In the past few days and weeks, I've heard a lot of people complaining about service delivery, and I'm actually one of the people who have been complaining about service delivery as well. Driving around, you see a lot of potholes, collection of waste or bins sometimes does not happen. We have had water problems, of course, because of drought, but generally the service delivery in our city has gone down, and it's not only Bulawayo, but it's also other cities. We've had a lot of promises about things that need to be done and that have not been done, and we've asked a lot of people, what's the problem? Why are we having such serious issues? And talking to people on social media and just conversations, one of the issues that people have raised was said have been that the last few years we have the quality of councillors that have been electing has been going down. We've been now, electing activists rather than people who have expertise. But also the councillors on the other side are saying that they are not to blame for service delivery because they have to approve or ask for approval from central government for most of the things that they want to do. They don't have revenue and all those kind of things. So there is kind of a blame game on who is responsible for the poor service delivery that we are receiving. And to help me discuss this issue, I have invited Rodrick Fayayo, who is a former director of Bulawayo Progressive Association. He has a bit of knowledge in terms of local governance and governance issues, and currently he is a PhD candidate. So Fire, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ndebele, and thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much especially for the issues around COVID. I think it's important that all of us take ownership and we are careful.
Yeah, so I know you've worked in the residence for many years. And I think from maybe about 2000 and something there. How has been service delivery in the last 10 years?
I think when we want to look at issues, our service delivery, I think for me there are two perspectives that we need to consider. The first perspective is that there is contestation. The local governance terrain in Zimbabwe has always been a contested terrain. So there has always been an effort by central government to try and influence whatever happens and get a stronghold in as far as the local governance is concerned. So for instance, if you look at the 1985 Provincial Administrative Act, it was basically a desire by central government to put its nose in local governance issues. The introduction of ceremonial mayor the introduction of mayors in Bulawayo was also an attempt by the local government to try and control. The introduction of Zinwa and Zinara, they were all meant to basically emasculate the local authority and make sure that the central government has a stronghold. So, and because of that, there are also issues of budget, where the local authority has to have its budget approved by central government. And a number of times, it takes a lot of time. And therefore, resultantly, it affects the ability of the local authority to provide services. But the other perspective that you also need to look at is that the people that we elected to provide oversight in local authorities, especially in Bulawayo, are actually operating as if they are employees of Bulawayo City Council. So the first thing that a mayor or a councillor does when he gets into office is to get a stand. And when they get a stand, when residents complain, the first person who then supports them is the town clerk. And from then onwards, there is a relationship that is created between councillors and the management at Bulawayo City Council. It becomes very difficult for the councillors to then provide an oversight. So many a times, there is confusion of whether councillors represent the resident or they represent the local authority. So that's why when people die in Luveve, it is a councillor who stands up and says, it is because residents are using dirty containers. So that's the conflict that you have amongst us. So when residents complain about issues of conflict of interest, especially in as far as the issue of stands is concerned, it is around those issues to say these stands then affect the ability of of councillors, to carry out their mandate. They can't do the oversight. They now have to be continuously defending the local authority. And because of that, we have had a problem where service delivery has gone down, where there is a portion that we can blame on the government. But there are some issues where we can see that the local authority needs to do better, because the past 10 years, it's been councillors from the opposition. But you will know that for the past 20 years, this has been the same government. So it has been operating different. So it is more about the people than the government. There is a portion the government has to blame, but also our councillors need to also to start taking their duties seriously.
You know, you mentioned one very important issue, that most of the times now our councillors behave as if they work for city council. You know, that thing of they represent the people is no longer there. So you find that they spend most of their time defending the council management or town clerk and the other guys, director engineering, than actually defending citizens to say, but you have a point here.
I will give you two examples. They are supposed to provide an oversight. They are supposed to be monitoring the local authority. They are supposed to be monitoring the management. But what then happens is that they end up implementing some of these projects from city council. For instance, instead of that being done by the local authority, it is being done by the councillors. So the problem that you then face is that when residents complain that there is corruption, it is corruption against the councillors. They can't then come to provide oversight, because it is them that are being accused of corruption. And it is the town clerk who then comes to defend them and says, no, there is no corruption here.
See, you know, in the last, let's look at the current council, Ile Konale. I think the guys, there's been a lot of infighting. You remember the Mlandu, Kambarami issue that went on, and it probably up to now, they are still fighting. Then there was the guys, the Coupe factor, where the guys were going to pledge their allegiance to Coupe because they don't want to be recalled. And all these things are affecting service delivery. How does central government come in those issues?
So if you want to see the peak of those fights, look at what exactly happened with the town clerk, where Kambarami wanted to fire the town clerk. And Kambarami knew that as the acting mayor, he had that power to fire the town clerk. That's why the town clerk kept on saying that, no, you can't fire me because you are not the mayor. It is the mayor who has to fire me. But the point that I was trying to put across is that when you look at that, you begin to see the epitome of the infighting. So when Kambarami raised those issues, no one was worried about the issue that Kambarami was raising. We all had a fallback mechanism, tribalism. So for us, it was about Kambarami being a Shona and the town clerk being Ndebele, and a Shona and Ndebele being under attack from a Shona. But none of us then sat down to say, what about the issue that Kambarami is raising? There was no one who then sat down and says, is there any validity in the issue that Kambarami was raising? We all spent our time saying it is a Shona attacking Ndebele, or it is that faction attacking that faction, and we left the issues. And those are the issues that affect service delivery.
Yeah, it's interesting that you raised the issue of tribalism, because the issue has come to either it's tribalism or it's factionalism. So if you are not Shona versus Ndebele, it's the Chamisa faction versus the Coupe faction. So is it also not about the issue of the quality of councillors that we now have?
First, let me say that there are, without any doubt, there are issues of tribalism. You can't push them away. But what has then happened is that people, especially the corrupt, have found a way of running away from their corruption, of running away from accounting for their corruption and raising tribal issues. So my thinking is that we need to be able to look at these tribal issues and call them by their name. They are tribal. But also we need to be able to then say, outside this tribalism, there are also issues of corruption that we need to deal with. And when you then raise the issues of quality, this is where it comes in, where we want councillors who will then be able to separate issues and say, these are issues of tribalism, these are issues of corruption. And we have a mandate as a council to provide an oversight on behalf of the residents. And every time we need to be speaking the voice of the residents, not the voice of the local authority. So what then happens is that because you have people who do not understand their roles, they easily fall into the line of the management. They do what the management wants them to do. And when they do that, they cannot supervise. And when they cannot supervise, service delivery deteriorates.
Do you think maybe the abolition of an executive mayor is also maybe to blame, because the executive mayor had power? But right now I feel like the town clerk actually is the de facto mayor.
Yes, the town clerk, you see, the town clerk is very powerful for a number of reasons. The town clerk is very powerful because, one, we only have a ceremonial mayor. And the town clerk is very powerful because also he can dangle carrots to these councillors. He can give them stands. And because most of them have nothing, so they can take without, and they then follow him. But also what you are looking at is the contestation also between the elected in council, the employed and the appointed. And right now, you should look, when you look at the town clerk, look at him as a representative of central government because of the way that is employed. The way that is employed, because while it is the councillors that will interview him, it is the central government that then approves. And it is the central government that will also approve his firing. So he knows that he is safe. There is nothing that they can do about him. See?
So I'm of the view that we need to separate the council elections from the harmonized election. The reason being, just a few days ago in my area, a neighbor came to me and asked me, so we started having this discussion and said, you know what, I voted for a councillor, but I really don't know him. And it was because what's the problem? And he wanted to phone the councillor and find out. So is it not that harmonized elections have made it so difficult for people to even scrutinize the councillors because they never campaign?
I think for me it is two things. It is the issue of the harmonized elections because usually people vote for a president. So for instance, it becomes a contest between Mnangagwa and Chamisa, even at a council level. Even where we know that Chamisa will not be there at council level, it becomes a contest. But also my thinking is that also it is about our political culture as the people of Bulawayo, but also as the people of Zimbabwe. That we all see our things, everything in a binary. It is either the MTC or ZANU-PF. And the challenge with that is that even if you separate these elections, the challenge is that when people go through their party processes, be it in ZANU or in MTC, people will still be looking at whether they are looking at ZANU or the MTC. So for me, it's okay to deharmonize them. But what is more important is that we need, one, an active citizen. A citizen who is able to ask questions, whether it is a friend or not. But secondly, we also need to have institutions that we can trust as residents. For instance, I was telling some people last week that for me, one of these institutions that we should use is the institution of the chief internal auditor. But the challenge is that right now it has no power. One, it is under the directors. Two, it reports to the town clerk. Three, when as a resident you go and you complain to the chief internal auditor, he will do an investigation, but he will not give you a report. He will give that report to the town clerk. And it is the town clerk who will then decide whether to release that report or not, whether to take action or not. I will give you an example. We complained as a residents association about a bulldozer where council paid $70,000 to somebody who was supposed to fix it. And that person knew that that bulldozer was never going to be fixed. And it was a dead bulldozer. But they then pretended as if they were going to be able to service it. They never serviced it. City council paid $7,000. The chief internal auditor did an investigation, discovered that the director of engineering did not do his duty and said he must be taken for hearing. and he was never taken for hearing by the town clerk. So what I'm trying to tell you is that it is the town clerk who will then decide whether to implement or not. And our thinking is that that should be an independent office. If you can have a chief internal auditor who operates, for instance, like a public protector, you will then have an institution where residents are able and know that they can go and report and something will be done.
But currently, do even residents know that there's someone called the chief internal auditor?
There are very few residents that know. And I know that a lot of residents went to report about the issue of the employment where councillors were either employing their relatives or they were making people pay so that they can be employed. And the internal auditor did a report, but none of the residents that reported got that report. So there is no confidence in that report. People think that it is actually an office that is there to massage the egos of the residents, to think that something is being done when nothing is being done.
You know, I remember when I was reading the Auditor General's report a few years ago, where council paid for, I think, 10 ambulances. I can't remember. I think it was over $200,000. And the ambulances were never delivered because the person disappeared with the money. Can we blame, I mean, who is to blame for that?
And in such a situation, you expect your councillors to be the ones who then go there and they demand answers. But the challenge is that in that procurement process, the councillors have involved themselves to the extent that when we are complaining and say people have wasted our money, it is not only the management, it is the councillors also that have been involved. You see? And the expectation is that when there is such a thing that has happened, there will be a follow-up process. But unfortunately, the Auditor General will only raise those things. He will not, for instance, provide recommendations and say this should be done. And his recommendations will not even be binding. So what we want is a situation where the recommendations of the Auditor General become very binding. And then we will be able to know that we have institutions that we can trust as residents and we can report to them.
You know, it reminds me of the Egodin project, which was hyped up as one of the projects that was going to really provide employment in the city and improve infrastructure. But maybe I think 4 years later, we still have nothing.
The biggest challenge that we have as the people of Bulawayo is that we have become so desperate. So anything that says there is money, we want it. We raised those issues that very same year. We raised these issues, but there are two things that happened there. The first thing was that the council that was led by Tabamoyo signed a contract with those people. And then the next council that came in changed the conditions of those contracts. So for instance, where that company was supposed to pay for the transfer of all those people that were operating there, it now became the obligation of Bulawayo City Council. And it was clear that that company had no man. We all knew that it had no man. But because people were looking for kickbacks, they pushed that thing. And even up to now, people know that that company has no man. But they allowed, they raised the hopes of the residents of Bulawayo. Thousands of them went there hoping that they will get jobs. And when we said it, actually we were labeled anti-developmentals. You see, but in actual fact, it is about the fact that there is no oversight. People are doing what they want to do willy-nilly. So,
do councillors have power to make sure that service delivery happens in the city?
Councillors have power to make resolutions. Councillors have power to make a lot of things, and they are not using it because they are conflicted. That's the biggest problem that we have. They can't use their power because they have left there because they are conflicted. Because how do you then go back to the town clerk and say, town clerk, you are corrupt, when the town clerk actually knows that you actually have a lot of other corrupt cases yourself? You have benefited from a lot of tender processes. It becomes very difficult.
So it's quite a tricky situation. As the residents, we have seen that over the years, Bulawayo, which was actually known as one of the best cities, is actually going down. Drive around town. I mean, I took the opportunity during the lockdown, especially the first lockdown, where there were no people, to just drive around. You know, and just ask yourself when those sheds were last, the sheds at Renkin were last, just spruced up. Look at the roads and everything. Nothing is working. As residents, what can people do?
You see, there is no way that a local authority that is prepared to pay $70,000 and let it go down the train can develop. There is no way that a local authority that can pay for 10 ambulances to someone that they have no clue whether they have a capacity or where they reside, can expect to develop. Unless and until, and the problem that we have in Bulawayo is actually not the local authority, it is the residents. One, it is the residents who believe so much in political parties, who think that when you love your political party, it simply means that you should not question anything. That when you love your political party, you should just approve everything that they say. Until a time when we are able to sit down and say to the people that belong to our political parties, why are you doing this? And how have you done this? And account for this, we're not going to go anywhere. But more importantly, when we have a residents that love their city to the extent that they think that anybody who raises an issue is actually a threat to their city, we have a problem. My thinking is that we need to love our city to the extent that even our friends, even our tribes people, even our political parties, we need to be able to hold them to account. If we get to that point, I think as a city we will go far.
But also, does it not start with the selection of the councillors? Do people have an opportunity to scrutinize the people who want to be councillors?
The problem with the selection of the councillors is that political parties know that they can do what they want without anyone doing anything. So they know, for instance, that they can bring in Fayayo from nowhere, and Fayayo can become an MP. And because Fayayo is wearing either a ZANU jacket or an MTC jacket, he will get away with it. They don't care. That's why I'm saying we need to have citizens who are able to question, even within political parties. They should be able to question processes and say, no. As residents, we think that there's a problem with this process and we will not agree to this process. If that happens, then even residents who do not even belong to political parties will also be able to then say, no. This person, when we vote now, we're not going to vote based on political parties. We are going to vote based on capacity. We know this person, he has been working with us, and we know his capacity, we're going to vote for them. Instead of a situation where people just come from nowhere and they are voted for, or they're not voted for specifically because they just belong to political parties.
It's you paint quite a sad picture, because I'm asking myself, are we likely to see any improvement in service delivery in the next few years?
If we want to see an improvement in service delivery, we need to first see an improvement in the attitude of the residents. So it should be very simple. We should pay our rates. When we have paid our rates, we should ask service providers to deliver. That's a very simple phenomenon. But our problem is that, one, as residents, we don't want to pay rates. And because we don't want to pay rates, it is very difficult for us to question. But above that, even when we are paying rates as residents, because we think that when we elect councillors, we elect God, it becomes very difficult for us to operate. So there are privileges that go with being a councillor. You will be employed, and it's not a small money that people are getting. You will be employed there by the councillor and you get a lot of money. And you don't want a situation where when you have elected a councillor, you don't go along with them because you will not be employed. So all of us are then forced to just go along with the councillor. And that is the attitude that must change. So my thinking is that unless you see a change in the residents of Bulawayo, the residents of Bulawayo should love Bulawayo so much so that they are prepared to question their political parties, to question their friends, to question individuals that they know. That for me is greater love for Bulawayo.
Thank you very much, Rodrick Fayayo. I think we have put it more clearer that for us to get good service delivery, our people need to start questioning a lot of things. We need to question the election of the councillors. Who are they? What are they capable of? But we need to question, whether it's the political parties, whether it's our tribesmen, because these days, MTC or who's not providing. Once you start questioning, you're now labeled ZANU, you're now labeled to Sutengwe Amashona. So unless and until we change our attitude and start demanding service, despite the fact that the person is Ndebele or MTC or ZANU, we are not going to get anywhere. And I can assure you that it is said that over the years, for people who lived in Bulawayo in the early 80s and the early 90s, know the kind of the city that we had. For people who lived in Bulawayo in about 2000, When we still had councillors of integrity who would say no to central government, no, the kind, during the yesteryears, I never really had an issue, or we never heard of councillors, trying to get stands and all these kind of things, because it was men and women of substance. Abantu babevele bevotelwa belezinto zabo. So we should stop this business of voting people of no fixed abode. Then they start looking for houses when they are now in office. I know people call it discrimination. People say, you need to, but we need to think, if I vote for someone else, I mean, how do you vote for a councillor every month, but it's your councillor? So how do you vote for someone who's not even mature enough to have a serious conversation about development? I think if we want service delivery, we still seriously need to look at the quality of the councillors that we vote for. And I know a lot of people are going to say a lot of things about this particular program, but just sit back, look at the service that you are receiving. Ask yourself, is this the best service that you can get from the City of Kings, or from Harare, or from Gweru? And next time when you go and vote, vote wisely. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and this was the Breakfast Club. I know we're going to have this conversation for quite a long time, and I'm willing, if anyone has comments, want follow-ups on issues that we have raised, please send me a message on Twitter. It's at Zenzele Ndebele. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on WhatsApp. You can also follow our page, site ZW, and let's get this conversation going, because the next election, we want, as the city, as Bulawayo, as Zimbabwe, to elect councillors who will give us service, who will stand up to central government if they are doing something that is wrong, to say, this is not what we voted for. Currently, I'm not sure whether we have really men and women who can stand up to this government and say, no, we're not going to give you our money, we're going to provide service. So let's get the conversation going. Until we meet again tomorrow on other programs, have a good day.